Next. All right, let me share my screen real quick. I'm a one man today, so give me a second. All right, can everybody see my screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
Cool. All right, so let me clear this out just not to throw you guys too much too fast. So today we're going to be going over, like I mentioned, hardening your system. Um, so kind of just in a nutshell, security hardening is um, is a way for you to lock down your system, whether it's a desktop or a server, to so whether that's running services that you do not need to be running, um, setting different passwords, setting root passwords, setting grub passwords, making different setting changes like enabling the firewall, things like that. And hardening can be done on pretty much any operating system out there. Between like whether you're running Linux, whether you're running Windows, even if it's like pfSense, OpenBSD, things like that. And there's a bunch of different tools out there and a bunch of different hardening platforms. So just to give you guys what a heads up of what we'll be covering today. Let me open up this. I'm currently right now on a Ubuntu 2204 server, which I'm going to be doing the demo on here. So there's two popular hardening like public hardening systems out there are I'd say standards or platforms. One CIS benchmarks, um, and that's what we're going to be covering today. Right here, this is their website, um, and they provide a very thorough, in-depth guide on actually how to harden different operating systems. So I'm just kind of perusing their website. Let me just close this out real quick. I'm just going to give you guys a kind of a high level of what they cover. These are different types of operating systems and systems. Everything from like Amazon Linux to Apache Tomcat to iOS. Um, Coming down here, we got Microsoft Windows desktop server, Firefox, um, Safari browser, VMware, and Ubuntu Linux. Ubuntu Linux is actually what we're going to be covering today. The other big kind of like alternative to CIS is called STIGs, and those are more those were created by the government. I am personally not super familiar with STIGs, so I can't speak too much on them. Um, Anybody here? I would just kind of open up to the audience. Anybody here familiar with STIGs and can talk more about them? I know Werelock, I know you've mentioned them before.
Yeah, so STIGs are really just equivalent. They're basically just like the description of, here's the problem, right? The security weakness that you could harden up. Um, and then that you don't want to confuse that with like an actual script or something to fix the problem defined by the STIG. And also there's Red Hat has a product called Satellite, which they use for structured sort of patching, enterprise patching. But an extra feature is they implement something called OS cap, I think, Open S cap, something like that. And it's like a way to, I think, like enforce STIGs uh, through matching scripts or something to uh, push compliance out to all the machines that are registered with that for that enterprise thing for patching. So anyway, that's just something I remember. So
Yeah,
so there's
so
so the standard is SCAP, and then somebody made Open SCAP. So yeah.
So yeah, those are two big popular solutions out there, and there are tons of tools you can use for reviewing the current security level of your system. Out of the box, Windows is fairly wide open in regards to a lot of their security settings, especially running things like Active Directory. There's a lot of hardening you need to do to make those actually production ready. And the same goes with Ubuntu and Linux. Though Linux comes out of the box a little bit, I would say, better than on like the Windows side. But whether you're using it a server desktop on either of those platforms, it is recommended to do some level of hardening on your system, whether your system's for work or it's for play. Um, I'll be focusing on just Linux today. It's a little bit easier to work on versus Windows. Um, and we're going to use some out of the box systems using Ansible to automate some of this hardening. Before I go into like the actual hardening part, um, there are some tools out there you can actually use for reviewing your system's security. There's one called Linus, and you can literally just do a sudo apt install Linus like this, and run this. Second, um, get that quickly installed. It's an open source tool. You can even run it from source from their Git repository. You can to run this, you can do Linus server audit.
It's actually recommended to clone it from their
Yeah,
repo.
yeah, definitely. Um, oops, let me grab the command real quick. Okay, so I did that backwards. So I'm actually going to run this. You can run this. This is just a test system. You can run it without root or with root. Root's going to give you a thorough scan. So right now I'm running a audit against the system. And then what it's going to be doing is just giving you printing out information like what detecting your operating system. Right here, I'm running Ubuntu 2204. Then it's doing some different. It's running tons of checks, hundreds of different checks against your system. Right here, it sees that I don't have this libpam temp directory tool installed. These software bundles here for listing app bugs and changes or failed to ban aren't installed. Some services are deemed as unsafe. And I know a lot of this is kind of confusing at first, and I'll go into like how you can kind of learn more about it. Like checking password hashing rounds, um, permissions on like your sudoers file, different things like that. And you can go through this and see kind of what your current state is of your system. Not all these things need to be done to have a hardened system. Some of the just a lot of it depends on your threat model and what you're using the system for. Hardening the system 100% will make the system roughly unusable in certain circumstances, or they can be very, very hard to maintain, especially if you're very new to Linux. So keep that in mind. Another kind of a small disclaimer too is if you're going to harden your system, it's good to make a backup beforehand because there is chances that you can make a change that could break your system and prevent you from logging back in. So something to keep in mind. So I'm just going through this. It's just showing different things here. And then what it'll do at the very bottom here is it will give you these results. It will give you warnings about things to fix, and then suggestions on things that you should fix. And then down here, it will give you a hardening index, quote unquote, score um, of what it deems your like security level is. It uses a little. This doesn't follow like CIS particularly or STIGs particularly. It's kind of got a little bit of everything in it. And the cool thing about their site or this tool is you can come in here and click on these links, and they will actually show you tips on how to resolve some of these issues here. Um, so if we go back, let's see if I have a better example here. Uh, Ivy tables module not loaded. And some of these you can Google as well too. So it's a pretty cool tool just for some high level stuff to learn. Um, so find anything else in here?
While you're looking at that, can I say something?
Yeah.
So I will say this, that I started off using this in Red Hat, and uh, we had a security team, and they had access to like Nessus or something, some enterprise scanner, and they wouldn't give me access to it. So I reached for this just to see, is there something out there, right? Well, using this alone and writing, my own custom script to harden a system, I was able to basically take a system, scratch installed stock Red Hat system and get it CIS benchmark level 1 compliant, and it was almost CIS level benchmark 2 compliant, except for like this one thing that the Linux tool wasn't catching. And it was like a problem with Apache or something. But once I fixed that one issue, then the system was level 2 compliant. So Linux is no joke. It's just those links really just take you to web pages that explain the issue. It doesn't really like, here's a script to fix it. So just bear
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yeah, and that's kind of I'll go into that next, about like actually how to fix a lot of these problems and how to go beyond that with the CIS benchmarks. Um, CIS benchmarks themselves, in order to get a lot of their tools, you need to be a paid member, and it's something that like an enterprise would get. It's not, I don't know the pricing, but I'm going to assume it's probably not cheap. But there are a lot of open source tools out there to help you audit your system and to help you apply the hardening as well too. And in all fairness to CIS benchmarks, they do provide very good documentation on how to audit your system, like manually, and how to manually remediate issues. But where I say manually, it's a very manual process. Um, so, but let's go through how to actually like let's look at like what the benchmarks actually are. So if we go to their website here, CIS benchmarks, we can go to Ubuntu Linux, and then we can download the benchmark. They are going to, I don't know why I'm getting a roadblock here, but they're pretty much when you click on that, it's going to load for me. Yeah, I think I'm not sure why it's not loading, but um, what you can do is you can create an account on the CIS benchmark site up here at the top, and then you sign in, and then you can download the benchmarks directly. They're going to be a PDF file typically under the free user, and you can like for example they'll have different versions for like Ubuntu, so they have 2204, they have 2404, and so on, and same with like Windows. They got Windows 11, Windows 10. Windows Server. It's like 2016, 2019, things like that. And what you'll typically get as a free user is going to be the benchmark as a PDF here. So this is the file. It's quite long. It's 1,000 pages. So which is definitely intimidating to a lot of people. But this is actually a really good documentation. This is something that John Strand actually brought up in one of his talks too about if you're new to security or you've been in security for a while and you really want to learn about system security and ways that systems are vulnerable, um, is to actually read through these CIS benchmarks and these different hardening techniques, because as a adversary you can learn ways that systems can be misconfigured and can possibly lead to ways into a system. And then as a defender, these are things to know to defend to like harden and lock down your system to prevent those easy paths into your system or easy paths to level privilege escalation. So, so looking at this file, I'll go through kind of like how this file works. You have it's broken down by it's got a really good table of contents, and it goes into like these different features to check. You have like things like file system kernel modules, ensuring like squash fs kernel module is not available, for example. Coming down in here on like your file system, having like your temp directory, your home directory, your var directories separated out in different separate partitions. And it goes into like why that is, setting up app armor, setting up you're securing the settings for like app like the apt repository manager, gnome desktop, setting certain services, like setting them to disabled that shouldn't be running if you don't need them. A lot of this is whether or not you need them. So let's say you are running LDAP server on your Ubuntu system, then you'd want to keep that on. You wouldn't want to disable it. So reading through this and understanding like what's being recommended to be turned off or on is important, because especially if your system is not new and you're hardening a pre-existing system, you don't want to break anything. So it's really good to get an idea of what's going to be modified with these changes. So I'm not going to go through all these. There's tons and tons of different ones. Honestly, it looks like a lot. It's honestly, if you do a glance over it, it doesn't take too much time. There's a lot of good information in here. And let's say, for example, let's look at one of these. So I am going to find one on like disabling this LDAP server service. So that's on page 236. So you have in here the title and then these profiles. So you have the two types of profiles or systems. You have a server, which is going to be like Ubuntu, like without a GUI. It's going to be like the Ubuntu server install. And then you have the like workstation, which is going to be like the Ubuntu desktop install. And if you're on Windows, you're going to have the difference between like workstation, which is going to be like Windows 10 or 11, or server, which is going to be like Windows Server 2016 or whatnot. Level 1 is like the basic hardening level. It's usually not going to break anything, as long as you read through what you're actually like enabling and hardening. Level 2 is like more extreme. It's going to make things. It's more than likely going to break things if you're not careful, and it's going to make the system block down to a point where it's definitely going to help prevent malicious activity in the system, more so than before. But it's also going to make your life a little bit harder to like maintain the system or use the system. So in this demo I'm going to do today, we're just going to talk about level 1 workstation, which is the Ubuntu desktop, which we're going to focus on. But there's nothing stopping you from going to the next level if that's something you want to do. And what I'm going to show off with the Ansible playbook, it's very flexible for what you can do. But yeah, it goes into a description, like the lightweight directory access protocol, LDAP was introduced. This is saying that we want to ensure that the service is not in use. So the rationale is, if the system is not an LDAP server, disable it, because that's just going to reduce your attack surface. It talks about the impacts, talks about whether or not you should use it, like different like reasons, if there's certain dependencies and things like that to be aware of. And then how to audit your system. It gives you actually a command to run if you wanted to like manually audit this one thing. And then remediation actually has the commands to remediate these manually as well. So systemctl stop, purge LDAP, which I believe just removes the package. So these are some things you can do if you wanted to manually run that. And then down here it talks about which controls it is based off like the CIS certifications. And then this, which I think is pretty new, it talks about the MITRE attack mappings to the MITRE attack matrix. And it talks about which techniques they are, which tactics they are, and which mitigations they are. So for this one example, I'm going to like copy this, and we can look and see which one this is here. So we look up MITRE. So this one is this is exploitation of client execution. And you can learn some more details. It gives some examples of threat actors that have been using it and where they've used it at. They talk about mitigations, detections, and so on. So it's got a cool feature that they've added in recently into the benchmark. So, like I said, it's definitely not light reading, but it is very educational. And for those that are both attackers and defenders, getting a good understanding of these controls will be good in both those scenarios. So, but yeah, let's go into the Ansible part. So I'm going to drop some links in the Meetup text channel that should hopefully help you guys with this next section. So let me grab those real quick. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next step? Or anything they want to know that I might have not answered?
I'm just really looking forward to when this gets Ansible-ized.
All right, there we go. So I'll here's this I'm dropping a link.
Nick,
Oh yeah, what's up?
maybe you have already shown this, but where can I get this PDF? This benchmark of
Yeah,
Ubuntu.
so you just go to the CIS benchmark website. You can on their website itself, you can go and download the benchmark from their page. It's usually going to ask you for like your email address and your name and all that stuff, and then you can download the PDF, or you can go up and create an account, and you can just download them directly. So you go to their website, CIS security or CIsecurity.org. You can't miss it. And
Got it.
I'll drop a link to this onto here as well. So I
One
dropped a
thing,
link. Oh yeah, go ahead.
one thing I'll say is, as you go through all these, you know, there are going to be certain ones that apply, certain ones that don't apply, right? And it's like and it's like if you don't have LDAP running on your server, maybe you know Linux won't detect it as being an issue. But let's say it did, or I don't know, just something, right? And it's like you know, it's like any other tool, you know, security scanner tool that could come up with like a false positive, right? And so you have to make a judgment call and say, you know what, this is kind of like, why does this even apply to me, right? Or why would I even care about it? And I know that there are several ones that I personally made decisions about, and there Linux supports a file called custom.prf, and if you installed Linux with apt, then it will default to the /etc/lynis directory for its configuration files. So you can basically just create a text file in there called custom.prf, and you can put a specification for the test designation. Like, I don't know, an example one would be like boot-5122, which is for a grub boot password. And so you can actually put in a directive that says like skip-test equals and give it the test identifier of boot-5122. And then you can just put another one. So you can just have a bunch of these little skip test directives. And then that way, when Linux is running and it hits that test, it'll check this file. And if it knows to skip it, then it'll just skip it. And then, you know, so that's, and if you're running, if you did clone it from their repo, then it's not gonna use the etc Linux one, but you can put it, I think, in the directory local wherever you cloned it. You can just put it in the root of that repo directory, and it'll work.
Okay,
And
cool.
I think you do. Let me see. think you do have to specify the custom.prf
Well, yeah, if you
file.
don't mind, drop the commands in the chat.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna carry on. So, for those that are following along, the first thing we're gonna want to do is actually get to this Ansible playbook that's in a GitHub repo. So I'm gonna drop a link to this. This is gonna be Ansible Lockdown. It's gonna be their Ubuntu 22 the CIS repo. And in here, this pretty much is this repo is pretty much like a giant playbook, Ansible playbook for hardening Ubuntu 2204 LTS. And you can come in here and learn about it. They have a lot of good documentation. Um, if you go here, we have the Ansible documentation, getting started with Ansible. Oops, I went to the wrong doc. Yeah, so this is their main doc on how to actually use the repo itself. They have some basics here as well too. They don't just cover CIS, but they also cover STIGs to an extent, and then they also have CIS benchmarks for Amazon Linux, Debian, Red Hat Linux, Ubuntu, and then for Windows, they have Windows 10, Windows 11, and then 2016 through 2022. And these are all playbooks, just like what we're going to be going over today. So the stuff I showed you today will mostly work for at least the Linux side of things. For the Windows side, it might be a little bit different. So just keep that in mind. So the first thing we want to do is we want to clone this repo locally to your system based off the most current release, which is version 2.0, which is version 2.0 is the CIS benchmark we're actually using. You can see it up in the PDF here on which version. They do occasionally update these every once in a while. You can see this one was updated in March of last year. So that's what we want to do. And we want to use this. We want to use the release based off the tag. And to do that, I'll drop the link, or sorry, I'll drop the command to run in your command line to get this to work. So I already have this installed actually on the system, but I'm just going to go to the temp directory and run through these same commands. And I am on a VM which is having copy and paste issues, so I'm hoping it's going to work fine. Looks like it is. So kind of. So I am going to do so I'm gonna do a git clone of the repo. Oh wait, this doesn't work at all. Hold on. Why is this not? I hope I don't have issues here with this. It's frustrating. It's gonna work. Okay, there we go. So git clone the branch, which is 2.0.0, and then the repo itself, and that will download the repo at that branch itself. And then I'm going to cd into the repo. So it's going to be Ubuntu 22-tis. I'm going to do a git status. And I am going to do a git switch -c to 2.0.0. Yeah, now I am on the right branch now. So yeah, I'm on branch 2.0.0.0. And that puts me at that release level. If we go to if we use just like whatever the default is in the repo, we possibly might have things that don't work as expected. So doing that from this branch, which is actually a tag, puts it at like their most valid release. So does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that? I know Git can be confusing. So I'll add all these to the chat here, so you guys have them. So there they are. So so now we'll see I'm actually in there. Then you want to open up. I'm using VS Code, so you can open up VS Code from the directory that you're in with the code space dot, and dot just means the current working directory. And if you run that, it will load up your VS Code in that directory. And let me just clear out some of this stuff here. And here I am. So from there, we need to install Ansible. So give a little background. I have two Ubuntu servers running right now that are in VMs. I have this controller and I have this member. The controller is going to be like kind of the main system. That's going to be like my master. And the member is going to be what the server I want to run the hardening against. You can theoretically run the hardening against the system that you're on. But just to be aware, you better know what you're doing because you could technically break things. And you can lock yourself out if you're not careful. So like I said, make a backup. Just be aware. But what I typically do is if I have a system I want to harden that I'm a little uncertain about like the changes I'll be making, I'll make a VM of that system. Like I personally use Pop! OS as my daily driver. So I'll make a VM of Pop! OS and I'll do my changes there, experiment, see if they work. And then I know if things work there, I can make them on my main system with less likely of having issues. So something to keep in mind. From there, we want to get we want to get Ansible installed. So I'm going to drop a link to these commands that we're going to go through. So I've actually already ran these on this system, but these are the commands you're gonna be running. So sudo apt add repository, this PPA Ansible repository. This will ensure you get the latest what do you call it, version of Ansible. Then you'll want to do a sudo apt update and then a sudo apt install. So I will run this, and it should work. Like I said, I have this already previously installed, so it shouldn't really do anything here on the system. And I just for time's sake, I'm gonna cancel it out because I have it installed already. And you can check by running Ansible -- version to see which version you have installed. I have 2.17.11. One thing to note is in the documentation, it does state you want to be on at least 2.12.1. That's been at least the last tested version of Ansible that's been ran against this playbook. So keep that in mind. From there, what we want to do is we need to generate there's different ways you can do this next step. So I'm just going to show you one way. It's going to be up to you for your scenario to figure out what's the best way for you. And you can do different research. You can do your own research to figure out what's a better approach. This is just one approach that I do, at least in this demo. And it's the easiest approach just to show you guys. So I have I'm going to log into this member server here. You can see if I do an IPA, I can see this is my IP address on this member server, and you can tell which server I'm in by either looking here or looking at the host name. This is called Ansible member. The other one's called Ansible controller. So something to keep in mind. So what we want to do is on the controller on the main system, we need a way to SSH into our member server because Ansible is going to run the commands remotely to the other system. So what you should do is create a dedicated SSH key that could be used for that other server. So this right here, I'm going to call this SSH keygen. I'm going to call it Ansible. I think there's an underscore here. You just can't see it for whatever reason. Ansible key 1. So I actually already have another one on here. You can call it whatever you want. But this is just going to generate a key. I don't know if you can get it to work with a passphrase. I believe you can. It's just a little outside the scope of this here. But something you definitely would want to do in a production environment if it's possible. So right now I do have that key generated, it is stored in my SSH folder, the private key and the public key. And let me actually get you these commands for you guys too. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, how's it going? Sorry, I'm a little late. I was watching the YouTube video as we were going along, but I also had to wrangle a kid.
Oh, fun. Yeah, we're in the process of getting Ansible set up.
Dude, am I hearing
Okay, so
Frankie?
snoring?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's my dog.
Yeah, it's either that or he's farting. I don't know.
One of those. So so we got the key generated, and now I am going to copy that key to the remote server. So we want to look at this member server. We see the IP address is 192.168.25.129. So what I'm going to do is run the SSH copy command, and that will copy it into that remote system. So I'm going to paste this here, SSH-copy-ID. I'm going to give the public key, which is the one we just created, and then the member server, this is my username over there at the IP address. And run that. Give it a second. Hopefully it all connects. Oh, you know what? Actually, I got the wrong. I know why. I got the wrong IP address in here. Let me just fix that. Yeah, that's from another system I was working on. So let me fix that. Oh, come on. It's okay. Okay, there we go. There we go. So yes, that key's been added. So if we come over here and we just do ls.la SSH, which is the under author. It should show up under authorized keys. The file, the key that you added in there. I'll just we can cat that file actually. So yeah, these. I think this is the one I put in the. This is actually one of the keys. This should be the latest key. And actually, we come over here and we do a cat. SSH. Oops. SSH. Ansible key pub. Let's see, 8TKL. 8TKL, yep. So that's the key. So that will allow Ansible to then log in there. The next thing you want to do is, and just be aware, you do have to have an SSH server running on this server. So, and there is a setting you need to set to adjust your allow public key authentication. It's not enabled by default. So you'll want to run a sudo vim or nano, whatever you want to use, /etc sshd config, and put in your password. You want to use sudo, and then we have this public key authentication. It's going to be commented out by default. You want to uncomment it out. Make sure it's set to yes. This will let you use public key to authenticate into the system. So I'm going to quit because I already have that set. Ooh, I'm pause real quick. Anybody have any questions so far? You all good? We're almost to the good part. So,
Looks good. Thanks, Sean.
cool. So the next going here. So next thing we got to do is we got to create a inventory.ini file. So inventory.ini. You'll create that. And we're calling these servers web servers. That was just from a template. You call it whatever you want. You call them workstations. You can call them whatever you want. This is just a way to announce to call them out. I think, yeah. So what you're going to want to do is the server you're going to be doing, you're going to put in the IP address, and then the Ansible user is going to equal the username on that server, and then the location where that key lives. So, like I just created the this is the private key on your current system that's going to be used to log into that remote system. So this is what you want to set. I will copy this and paste it into the chat so you guys have that in case you guys want to use this. And then the other thing is your site file. Site is telling the system this is the default file that comes in the repo, and it's just saying it's going to run on all hosts, and it's going to become, which is I believe it's setting Ansible to sudo to be a super user on that system, and then it's going to be running this. The role is going to be running the playbook directory, everything in the playbook directory. And these are variables within Ansible. Those you can see, I believe they are actually defined somewhere. So we go here, just do a find. Yeah, I believe this is just a normal Ansible like nomenclature. So the next thing you want to do here is go to defaults. So this is we're going to spend some time here to understand this file. So this is what's going to run on. This is where you tell like what to run on the system that you're going to be hardening. So we see here at the very top. First off, I'm going to share a updated version of this because when I ran this, I ran into some issues, and it's not set by default for a workstation. It's kind of set for like servers. So let me get a link to you guys on this updated version. So yeah, it's right here. So if you want to use mine, you can. This is on our null 404 repo. And this is the main.yaml under defaults. So these sections right here that it's mentioning about turning on and off baseline sections, these refer back to the CIS benchmark. And if we go to here to the actual changes, we have sections. So we have section 1, we have section 2, we have section 3, and so on. So that's what it refers to in regards to sections. So if you want to turn them all on, like enable them on by all on by default, you set them up here. Here I'm leaving these by default, like skip reboot. We don't want to reboot here. You can if you want. I just chose not to. For audit, I am setting checking for level 2 as false. The disruptions, there's a high chance of disruptions. You can read more into this. I set this to false. There's a lot of settings here, so I won't get like super into like the nitty gritty. There's a way to run an audit mode using this tool to audit your system if you want to just do a passive audit without making changes. That is something you can do. I'm not super familiar with that feature, so I'm not going to show it here. But I'm going to keep on scrolling down. So this is the rule-specific switches. This is where you can say, I don't want a specific rule to be enabled. By default, everything's going to be set to true. So you want to carefully go through this guide here and figure out what you want on and off. One thing to note is you want to look to see if you're going to be doing level 1 or level 2 on these. So if you're only focusing on level 1 workstation, you need to see if the action is going to be for what you want, and if not, you need to disable it. So, for example, this is like rule 53342. So we're going to look in here, which section 5. So we're going to go all the way down 53342, which would be right here. And if we don't want this on, we would set it to false. So you can see I went through and I did set some of these to false. Most of these are set to false because they were either level 2, which I didn't want to enable, or they were for like server specific stuff. Like I didn't want to disable like the GNOME desktop because that's what I need for the desktop. And then lastly, there was a couple issues that like bugs that I ran into on a couple rules that weren't running properly. And what my thoughts are is maybe since this guide has been updated in like over a year, there could be some new things that were introduced to Ubuntu that could broke these from running. So I just disabled those. So if you use mine, it should run fine without any issues. One thing you want to do if you don't, that's going to pop up if you run this, and actually, yeah, going down here too, you'll just keep it. You can look at the rest of the settings I have here. Like I'm using Crony instead of or Crony instead of systemd timesync. I believe that's set up by default on I know it was for Pop OS. I believe it might be the same for Ubuntu. So and you can see all these are linked to certain rules, so you can read more into them. There was some that were like disable wireless or Bluetooth, which I didn't want on my desktop. This is for universal firewall, allowing outbound ports by default. It was only allowing out port 53, 80, and 443. I set up all for this example because I didn't want it to be locked down to those, but that just depends on what you want to do. So go through here. There's a lot of stuff. Like I said, lots to learn. There are some settings in here you can manually set to if you want to like have Ansible set like a grub password, which is a good thing. You can do that. So yeah, something just it's good to understand what you're running. So reading through this and getting a good comprehensive idea, especially on a system that you use day to day that you don't want to break, it's good to know, and it's just good to learn. So that's the main thing to take away from this. So, now the question is like, let's run this against the server. So one thing when you run this, you are going to probably get hit first off with a warning if this is a new system that your root password hasn't been set. It's actually a check in here. I think it's like root. Let's see where it's at. Yeah, setting root password. This is grub. Let's see. And it will actually when you run it, which I'm going to show you guys how to run it in a minute. It's going to pop up and say, hey, you need to manually set your root password. And I don't know if you can do it through here, which you probably don't want to anyways. To do that, for those that aren't aware, we're going to go into that server. And then we're right now, I'm a regular user who has sudo permissions. I'm going to run a sudo-I to become root. Now I am root. I'm by default, the root password is not set. You need to set it, and you'll do this with passwd, and you put in a root password. This should specifically be different than your normal user password. Make sure you save that somewhere off safe. So something to keep in mind. I already have that set, so I am going to just exit out of that. Any questions so far? All right. The other thing too is your user that's on your member server that we're going to run the CIS benchmarks against. That user, a lot of people will create a dedicated like Ansible user that's like locked down. That's something you can do. For this example, I'm just using this user called member that I created. That user needs to have sudo permissions, which is why some people just create a special user for Ansible for it if their regular user doesn't have sudo permissions. But if you need to do that, you can create a user and then add them to the sudoers group. So something to keep in mind, something you can do a quick Google search on. So yeah, let's talk about actually like running the actual hardening against it, and hopefully this all works. So I'm going to clear this. I'm back on my control server. I'm going to run Ansible playbook and -I for the input the inventory file, which is inventory.ini, and then the site file, which is site.yaml right here. And then -K. -K is to ask for the password for like become, which is like the pseudo password that's going to be used for elevating access on the machine. So I will drop a link to this in the chat as well for you guys. All right, and I'm going to run it. So I'm going to put in that password. Hopefully I put that in right. And now you can see it running. So what this will do is Ansible is like a desired state control system. So for those that are new to it, Ansible has like end states of what the system like should look like, and you can set up you can use different playbooks that can pre-program that. You can have custom scripts, and you can see right now it's actually running against the system. A lot of these will say skipping because I've already ran this. This isn't a first pass. I just want to make sure everything's going to be good for you guys. But it'll actually tell you if the things were changed or if they weren't changed. So you see right here, this was changed here. This is because it's doing a software update, so it's always going to change. Skipping is the things that it's already been done. So and how this system knows like what it's actually doing is you can actually come in here. Let's just search for this, for example. So like ensuring app armor is installed. And one thing to note too, when you guys run this, app armor can take forever to initialize. So if you run it and it takes forever and it times out, I'm actually going to show you how to like fix that. It's kind of annoying, and I've seen people complain about it online. So what you can do, and this is just going to give you some examples or show you how these playbooks work. So if I come in here and I do a search for this text, you'll see I have this file here. This file correlates to one of the CIS benchmark rules, 1.3.1.1. You can see here it's for app armor being installed. I can come over to the doc and do a search. And hopefully it's going to be fast enough. There it is. I was hoping it's going to be fast, but maybe not. Oh, here we go. So, here we go, right here. So ensure app armor is installed. So on the guide, this shows you what's going on here. And what it looks like on the Ansible side, if we go in here, you'll see it's it's got some parameters like when to run this, and this is if the rule is enabled, which it is. There's some other things in here. There's tags, so this is like level 1 server, level 1 workstation, and then what it's doing here is it's checking to see if app armor is present, and if it's not, it's going to create it. And you can actually go online to see what like this package does. So this right here is going to be I believe this goes and does an app install of app armor if it's not installed. And then what this does is it makes sure it's enabled in the bootloader. So it's coming in here and changing some settings, and you can dive into it. Like I said, full disclaimer, I'm not an Ansible expert, so I don't know all the nitty-gritty details of like how a lot of these playbooks work to a T. But between looking at what it's doing in here, doing some research, and then looking at the control inside of the CIS benchmarks, you can kind of get a clear idea. So it's come in here, learn what it's doing, what's being set up. One thing I do have in that main.yaml files, I have like for example, app armor set to complain mode, not enforce mode, which is in complain mode, just like a logging passive mode. So this is something that I set in there because I don't want things to be enforced. So if you look up complain in here, you should, yeah, right here, app armor mode complain. This is something that I believe it might have been default. I might have changed it. And then going back to that one issue where I said where app armor can like hang for a long time, and it will just like time out. If we go back here, you'll see I actually have it commented out. I should actually have it commented out. It might actually be in another one. Oh, that's weird. Hold on, see, is it hanging here? Oh yeah. Oh, you know what? No, it's not app armor. It's aid. Sorry, I apologize. It's aid that will hang. So aid is a intrusion, like a kind of like a, what is it? It's like tripwire. It's a the name's escaping me. It's file integrity checking tool. And it will hang here, and I mostly will fail. You guys, if you guys are following me along, you'll probably run into the same problem. And if you go, it's because this process here it's doing a big download and a bunch of like processing. If we go here and we run a top on the member server, you'll see aid right here, just like maxed out at 100%. So, and this will time out. We don't want to sit here and wait forever for this thing to run because I want to give you guys back your night. So what I'm going to do here is actually cancel this. It only needs to run once, technically. So I am going to come over here, copy this, and do a search for this. And then what I will do is I will I believe I just actually, we're going to look for this whole thing. So we want to look for the specific thing this specific one that's running here. So, which is this line right here. So this is the one that's checking. It's doing this configuration here. So I am going to just comment this out. And then I am going to rerun this. And one thing you can do too, since I've already ran up to section 6, I don't, when I rerun this, like, for example, I don't want to like have it go through. When you run a playbook, it's always going to go from the beginning throughout the whole thing. And just for time sake here for this demo, I am going to like skip sections 1 through 5, and I'll show you guys how to do that. If that's something you want to do for whatever reason, maybe you're running into the same reason I'm doing here. So I'm going to set these to false, section 1 through 5. And hopefully this makes sense. I apologize if it doesn't. But now I am going to rerun this now. And it should start. It might start at the previous sections, but it should fly through them and actually not try to make any changes. So it should go a little faster. Let's see what happens. This is right here is doing a preliminary audit and gathering a bunch of data, so the system has some details to on like what needs to be changed. So most of you see here skipping all these because I've set all these defaults. So it's still, unfortunately, it's still going to blow through all those, but it should go pretty fast, hopefully. And when we get to the aid section, it should skip that one that's taking forever. And you can see here, this is still processing, but aid's currently installed in the system, so we should be able to get past that step. So section 5, section 1, here we go. So and do know that this tool acts as like an audit for your system as well too, because each of the checks that are going on is actually checking to verify that what was supposed to be changed is changed. So you can use this tool as a way to audit. And like I mentioned before, there is a full audit mechanism in here. If you want to do like a audit only mode, it's something I haven't personally played with, but it's something that I would encourage you guys to look into. So we're on going through section 6, and so as it's going, it's making changes to the machine step by step by step. Anything that says okay means it's passed. Skipping means it was more than likely it was set to false in here. Any other questions? We're getting pretty close to wrapping things up. Right now, we're pretty much watching paint dry. Oh,
So
well, actually, look, we did finish this. What was that, Rowlac?
what's your final measure of did the thing do the thing?
So that's where Ansible running Ansible itself will give you the measurement actually. So we have all these turned on and we do a full run here and let it run. That will actually give you a measurement because it's actually doing auditing as well in here. Tell you whether or not these controls are in place or they're not. And if they're not, it's going to give you a warning or a failure. And that stat at the very end of the run will tell you if there's problems. So that's the audit. That's kind of like the audit mode to kind of find out. Okay, now is my system up to CIS benchmarks level 1 or 2?
Does it actually tell you that?
So there
Probably
is
not.
so there is there is an audit mode. I mean, outside of like what relying on the playbook to give you the correct answers. You can, I believe, if you use the audit mode, you can do a more extensive audit to find out um, whether or not it's in some good like known state based off another measure outside of Ansible itself, which is something that would be good to do. I typically like have run like Nessus. You can run like a home Nessus. You can use OpenVOS. I think they have CIS support. There's other systems you can run. Linus unfortunately doesn't give you like pure CIS benchmarks, so it's not a good way to test it. So I would look for those that are curious about that want like to get an audit outside of the Ansible results. I would look at the audit feature within here. And within the docs on their website, they do have some information on how to do the audit.
Have you ever done an audit with it?
I have not done like a separate audit than the regular Ansible audit. So their documentation, it's a little confusing. I tried yesterday to get this to work. Doing an audit only setup, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. But in the nature of Ansible itself, and the way these playbooks are set up, it is doing an audit throughout the system here. So anything that was failing the audit would show up as a failure here, or it would just break and actually stop the run altogether if there is a problem.
Well, as I said earlier, I ran the Linux tool and ran hardening stuff, and then had them do a scan, and it ended up being almost CIS level benchmark 2, right? So and on the point scale of Linux, it went from like a stock, like what you saw was like what 62 points or something, but it went up to
Yeah.
like 94.
Oh, okay.
So if you get a really high score like that, chances are you're probably pretty good off. But it would be really good to have some approach or tool, that would knows what the benchmarks are, and then apply them, or do the audit and then give you an official result. So at least right? Like, okay, if my goal was to get it level 1, and I can see that this thing says that it's level 1, I'll trust it.
Yeah.
I just don't have that personally, so I don't know if anybody else
Yeah.
here has a tool.
I know you do that with Nessus and other vulnerability scanners.
Anything
Um,
lightweight? Nessus is like
Uh,
enterprise level.
yeah. I mean, they have a home version you can use. There are, yeah. Anybody else here know of anything that's lightweight or open source, like a script you can run?
For Linux in particular, like I know like there's Kubench for like Kubernetes that will
Okay.
actually spit out an audit report saying like what things are deficient
Okay. Per CIS benchmarks.
per CIS Git bunch. It's a
Okay.
Kubench.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Like I said, I believe the audit feature in this tool can do that. Um, but if we're looking for like a dedicated tool that does audit only, yeah, if anybody knows of one, please share. If not, I'll do some research and let you guys know my findings.
So the repo of this tool, I mean, is it associated with CI security or anything official, or is it just some rando dude?
Looks like it's CIS. Yeah, it's because
Is it?
yeah, if you go to the CIS benchmarks website, CIS uh, CIS was it security? They actually have a Kubernetes benchmark on here. So if you go to
Well, I'm talking about
um,
the Ubuntu 22-CIS repo.
oh, it has Kubernetes.
No, I want to know if that was put out by CI security, right? As like, hey man, here's a repo, run a bunch of Ansible crap, and it complies with our CIS benchmark. So like all the little 1.1.2.3. Whatever codes, you can look them up, or whoever created this, was it just some rando dude on the internet?
So
Uh,
on the CIS benchmark site, I just dropped it into Meetup. There's actually like by each type of operating system or environment. If you go to the very bottom, you'll see Ubuntu Linux. They have one for 2204 is the latest one they have. Or sorry,
Are you talking
2404.
Are you talking about the CIS benchmark gigantic 1,000-page PDF?
No, if you click on the link I dropped into link, like the text for like cissecurity.org, if you click on that one, you can say like what environment you're in. Scroll down to the bottom, you'll see Ubuntu Linux, and then there's a benchmark tool you can download.
yeah, and it looks like based off that, it looks like it probably follows this CIS benchmark Kubernetes benchmark. And it looks like that same company, Aqua Security, which is I've actually met these guys before. They actually have one for Linux as well too. So they
Oh yeah,
have a
perfect.
Linux benchmark for CIS. Unfortunately, it looks like it only supports the 1.1.0 benchmark, so that's kind of a bummer. But I'm sure we could. I'm sure there's something out there that can do this.
I see 3 links under Ubuntu Linux. It says download the benchmark. To further explore the benchmark, click here. And if you want to tailor the security recommendations of this benchmark, you can do CIS Secure Suite membership. Are you talking
Oh,
about
if you're
something
on the,
else?
if you're on the, if,
I literally used the link that Kevin dropped in the chat.
I could talk. We could talk after this. I think I might be mixing this up with something else I'm thinking of. I know that's like the actual like checklist, but there's a tool out there. I can think of it afterwards.
yeah, I know CIS, the actual company, they actually have tools for doing it, but they're not for. I don't believe they're free. I think they're paid for enterprise tools.
Okay.
So,
So how did you find this repo of this Ansible dash lock? Or I guess this user called Ansible dash lockdown.
so this is put on by a company called Lockdown Enterprises.
Okay, and
That's
that's
on.
not
And
associated with CI security, right?
they are not, no, because the
Okay,
CIS security, they
good.
don't give away any free stuff. So this is like an open source
All
tool
right.
that
So
does the same
so
thing. Just
so
yeah,
yeah. So out of those 2 categories, it falls into the category of rando dude on the internet, except it's a company.
yeah, it's a company. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
That's it. Yeah, that's the question that I had.
yeah, and what you could do, like if you wanted to recreate what they did, is you can literally go through this booklet here, and they give you like all the audit and the remediation steps. So you could, if you wanted to do like what these guys did, you can recreate the same thing. So
Oh
um,
yeah, I mean, so the way I did it is I used the Linus tool, and it's got a log file that it generates, and Sysify, the company, whatever, that puts out the Linus tool, they've got their own designation for these tests, like BOOT-5122 or whatever, and they've got
Mhm.
their own, like you followed those links to those
Yeah.
explanatory web pages. Yeah, I'm not really sure I guess there's probably like a one-to-one connection between what they're testing and maybe what the CIS benchmark is, since I mean, I don't know if there's any connection between the two directly.
Yeah, from my research on the Linus tool, they don't follow specifically CIS or STIGs. They follow a little bit of their own. It's like their own. It's kind of like their own thing. I think it
Yeah.
might be because CIS benchmarks is kind of like a trademarked thing, and I think technically like there might be some legalities around it. I don't know. That's why like I said, they have certain CIS security has certain things behind a paywall that
So
aren't
the
free.
approach, so as I was saying earlier, the approach that I used was I used the Linus tool, which is free, ran that, and then it says at the very end, hey, if you want more details, here's a log file. You crack open the log file, and you can see test by test by test uh, what like what problem that it found. And then since Linus is itself is, I think it's just it's like a sequence of bash scripts or something, you can actually do a keyword search for that test within Linus, the code itself, and find the block of code that actually was running that produced the log output, and that like what exactly was it doing. They went to this directory, it ran this command, it was expecting this output. You can just see in the logic of the code itself. And then I just wrote a bash script to actually fix the issue that it was, said, oh, I looked at, I tried to do this, and I'm expecting this result, and it said this instead.
Nice.
So
Well,
that's so
cool.
that's one comprehensive approach that you can do, which I think is a little nicer in a way, but it's good to have like the official commands, the remediation command. If I'd had those remediation commands, it would have been better, but it was quite a learning process. And I think it's worthwhile if you kind of do it on your own, but it's probably better to do a bunch of playbooks than a freaking bash script.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I definitely wanted to overemphasize is that you definitely want to really understand. You do really want to understand all of this before you start applying this, especially to like a production server, because
Yeah,
you will for sure break things if you don't. But it is extremely valuable information. I'm sure you learned a lot when you did it like manually. And I think whoever's going to be doing this, this is there you're going to learn a lot of things about security on Linux. And like I said, whether you're a blue teamer or a red teamer, there's a lot of valuable information in here. And really, CIS doesn't stop at CIS. There is STIGs that are like more government focused. Like we mentioned before, Linus has their own idea of hardening as well. That's a little bit different than CIS and STIG. So looking at all those, plus there are CIS. If you have your system CIS like benchmark level 2, it doesn't mean you're unhackable. There are still a lot more things you can do to lock down your system. Like for example, like if you're familiar with like living off the land, and those like binaries, LL bins, removing things so you have like the least amount of attack surface out there possible, or locking down more permissions across your systems, things like that. And these things aren't covered in CIS benchmarks or a lot of other scanners. So there is a lot more security hygiene that's good. That you don't want to just rely on these to tell you, hey, I'm good or not, because you could follow all this, but you could still have like the permissions all jacked up on your system, allowing the world everything to be world readable or whatever. So I think this is like everybody likes to say, security is like an onion. It's layers, and this is just one layer of the security onion.
Yeah, I will
But
say, I will say for my efforts that having a benchmark and having a specific target